The message arrived at the Galactic Federation Council during their morning session. High Counselor Zethnak of the Vorten Empire read it 3 times before he believed what his 4 eyes were seeing. The Krath swarm had broken through the defensive line at Sector 7. 300 ships were heading toward the Luminari homeworld. The Luminari were a peaceful species who had never developed weapons. They would be destroyed in 2 days. Zethnak looked around the great council chamber. Representatives from 47 species sat in their designated areas. The Vortens were the oldest race in the Federation. They had built this alliance over 10,000 years, but now they faced a problem that wisdom alone could not solve. "We have 92 ships in range," said Admiral Crix of the Thalian Navy. His blue scales shifted nervously. "The Krath have 300. We cannot win this battle." "Then the Luminari will die," said Representative Yama of the Dendari Collective. Her voice carried the sadness of someone who had already accepted defeat. The council fell silent. Everyone knew what was coming. Someone would suggest it because there was no other choice, but no one wanted to be the first to speak those words. High Counselor Zethnak took a deep breath. "We must request human command." The chamber erupted in noise. Some species made sounds of agreement. Others expressed fear and anger. The Villani representative actually fainted, his gaseous form spreading across the floor in a purple cloud. "The humans are dangerous," said Lord Trix of the Melthari Collective. "Their history is filled with violence. They conquered their own world through war. They think differently than us." "That is exactly why we need them," Zethnak replied. "The Krath are a swarm species. They attack with overwhelming numbers. They have no strategy beyond crushing their enemies. We need someone who thinks about war in ways we cannot." "The humans have been part of our Federation for only 50 years, Admiral Crix said. "They are children compared to us. The Vortens were building starships when humans were still living in caves." "And yet," Zethnak said slowly, "in those 50 years, humans have never lost a battle they commanded. Not one." This was the truth that no one wanted to acknowledge. When humans first joined the Federation, the other species had treated them like amusing pets. Humans were small, weak, and lived very short lives. Their bodies had no natural weapons. They could not survive in space without protective suits. They needed to eat and sleep far more often than most species. But then the Drex Raiders attacked a human colony on the edge of Federation space. The Federation sent ships to help, but they arrived too late. The humans had already won. 1,200 humans with basic weapons had defeated 5,000 Drex warriors. The Drex had never been defeated by any species. The humans did it in 3 days. After that, the Federation started paying attention to humans. They studied human history and found something terrifying. Humans had been fighting wars against each other for thousands of years. They had developed countless ways to kill and destroy. They had invented weapons that could crack planets, poisons that could kill billions, and strategies so complex that even Federation computers struggled to understand them. Most species in the galaxy had achieved peace long before they reached the stars. War was something they left behind in their primitive past. Humans never did. They carried it with them like a disease they refused to cure. But that disease was also their greatest strength. "Send the request," Zethnak said. "Ask Human Command to take over the defense of Luminari Prime." The message traveled through subspace in seconds. It reached the Human Military Coordination Center on the planet called Earth. There, it was read by General Sarah Chen, the head of Human Federation Operations. General Chen was 63 years old. She had gray hair cut short and a face that showed the stress of decades of service. She had fought in 3 conflicts before humanity joined the Federation, and she had commanded human forces in every major battle since then. When she read the message, she smiled. "Finally," she said to her aide, Captain Marcus Webb, "they finally asked." General, Webb looked confused. "The Federation has been holding us back for 50 years, Marcus. They let us fight small battles. They give us patrol duties, but they never let us command anything important. They are afraid of us. And now they are more afraid of the Krath. Chen stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the lights of Geneva sparkled in the night. Get me Admiral Tors. We are going to war. 2 hours later, a human fleet of 30 ships departed from Earth orbit. It was a small fleet compared to what the Federation had gathered, but human ships were different from Federation vessels. They were built for one purpose, and that purpose was destruction. The Federation designed their ships for exploration and trade. They added weapons as an afterthought. Human ships were weapons first. Everything else was secondary. The hull designs came from centuries of naval warfare. The weapon systems used principles that Federation scientists considered too dangerous to develop. Admiral Elena Tors commanded the human fleet from her flagship, the Earth Republic ship Determination. She was 45 years old with dark skin and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had studied every battle in human history and many that were not human at all. As her fleet flew toward the gathering point, she received constant updates from Federation Command. The situation was bad. The Krath had destroyed 2 more outposts. Their fleet had grown to 350 ships. The Federation forces were demoralized and afraid. When we arrive, I want full tactical control, Tors said during a conference call with High Counselor Zethnek. Complete authority over all Federation ships in the sector. Zethnek hesitated. That is unprecedented. No human has ever commanded a mixed fleet. And no Federation fleet has ever beaten the Krath. If you want to keep doing things the same way, I can turn my ships around. The Vorten counselor was silent for a long moment. Very well, you will have full command. Tors smiled the same smile that General Chen had shown earlier. Then, please tell your captains to be ready for something new. When the human fleet arrived at the assembly point near Luminari Prime, the Federation ships formed up in perfect defensive formations. They created walls of metal and energy, designed to absorb the Krath assault and hopefully slow them down. Tors looked at the formation and shook her head. This will not work, she said to her tactical officer, Commander Lee. They are following standard Federation doctrine, Lee replied. Maximum defensive coverage. The Krath will overwhelm them in hours. They are thinking about this battle like prey. We need to think like predators. Tors opened a channel to all ships in the fleet. This is Admiral Tors. I am assuming command of this operation. All ships will disregard previous orders. New tactical assignments are being transmitted now. Across the fleet, Federation captains received her orders with confusion and alarm. She was breaking their formations apart. She was sending ships to positions that made no sense. She was asking them to do things they had never done before. High Counselor Zethnek received 100 complaints in the first hour. He ignored them all. Let the human work, he told everyone who called. We asked for this, now we must trust. But trust was hard when everything you knew was being thrown away. The battle for Luminari Prime was about to begin, and no one except the humans knew what would happen next. Admiral Tors stood on the bridge of the Determination and watched the clock count down. The Krath would arrive in 12 hours. That was just enough time to prepare her surprise. Let us show them, she said quietly, what humanity learned from 10,000 years of war. Commander Lee looked at her with respect and a little fear. That combination was common when people spent time around humans who commanded armies. What exactly are we going to show them? Tors turned to face him. That the universe made a mistake when it gave us these big brains and these short lives. We learned to fight fast and fight hard because we did not have time for anything else. The Federation has been fighting the Krath for 200 years. We are going to end this war in 2 days. It sounded like boasting, but Commander Lee had seen enough human battles to know it probably was not. The Federation ships took their new positions. The human ships moved to the front, and across the darkness of space, the Krath swarm came closer with every passing minute. The battle for Luminari Prime was about to begin, and humanity was finally in command. The Krath arrived exactly when the Federation sensors predicted. 352 ships emerged from hyperspace in a tight cluster, their forms looking like twisted metal insects against the stars. They wasted no time with threats or demands. The Krath did not communicate with their prey. They simply attacked. Admiral Tors watched them come on the main display of the determination. Around her, bridge officers from 5 different species worked at their stations. The Federation had insisted on mixed crews for major operations. Tors did not mind. She had learned to work with aliens during her career, and she respected their abilities even if she sometimes found their thinking strange. "They are forming attack wings," Lieutenant Commander Yuri Petrov reported from Tactical. "Standard Krath assault pattern. They will hit us in waves." "Count the waves," Tors ordered. "Tell me how many ships in each group." Petrov studied his screens. First wave is 80 ships. Second wave is 100. Third wave is 172. They are keeping their largest group in reserve. Tors nodded. This was what she expected. The Krath were not stupid. They were a hive mind species, which meant that every ship was connected to every other ship through a form of mental communication. They did not need radio signals or subspace transmitters. They thought together as one massive brain. But that unity was also their weakness. Tors had studied Krath behavior for 20 years, ever since humanity first learned about them. She understood something that the Federation had never figured out. "The Krath learn from victory," she said to her command staff. "Every time they win a battle, they remember what worked. They use those same tactics again and again because those tactics have always been successful." "But they have never lost," said Federation Liaison Officer Crix, a Thalian who had been assigned to observe the human commander. "How does that help us?" Tors smiled. "It means they have never learned to adapt. They do not know what to do when something goes wrong because nothing has ever gone wrong. Today, we are going to teach them failure." She opened a channel to the fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral Tors. Hold your positions until my command. Do not fire unless I give the order. I know this will feel wrong. I know your training tells you to shoot at enemies when they come into range, but I need you to trust me. If anyone fires early, I will personally make sure they never command a ship again." The Federation captains received her message with mixed feelings. Some understood that she had a plan. Others thought she was crazy, but they all obeyed. The human had been given command, and Federation law required them to follow her orders. The first Krath wave closed to weapons range. 80 ships pointed their weapons at the Federation fleet. Energy weapons charged. Missile tubes opened. "Hold," Tors said calmly. The Krath fired. Beams of destructive energy crossed the space between the fleets. Missiles streaked toward their targets. The Federation ships activated their shields and took the hits. "We are taking damage," reported Captain Veles of the cruiser Starlight Hope. "My forward shields are at 60%. "Hold position," Tors replied. "Do not fire back." More Krath weapons hit the fleet. Shields dropped across dozens of ships. The Thalian battleship Endless Courage reported a hull breach on Deck 7. 3 Federation destroyers lost engine power. "Admiral Tors, we must respond," Liaison Officer Crix shouted. "We are being destroyed." "No," Tors said. "We are being tested. The Krath are measuring our strength. They want to know how hard we can fight so they can plan their final assault. We are not going to give them that information." She watched the tactical display with cold eyes. The Krath first wave was doing exactly what she expected. They hit hard, recorded the results, and pulled back to share their knowledge with the rest of the swarm. The second wave would be stronger. The third wave would be overwhelming. But Tors was not planning to fight waves. All ships retreat on my mark. Fall back to position Delta 7. Make it look chaotic. Make them think we are running." The order went out. Federation captains executed it with varying degrees of skill. Some retreated smoothly. Others stumbled over each other in their hurry to escape. It looked exactly like a fleet that was losing its courage. The craft saw the retreat and responded exactly as Tors predicted. They abandoned their wave formation and surged forward together. 350 ships chased the fleeing Federation fleet like wolves chasing injured deer. "They are pursuing," Petrov reported. "All craft ships are now committed to the chase." "Perfect." Tors entered commands into her console. "Signal the human ships. Execute Operation Shepherd." The 30 human vessels had been hanging back, hidden behind a large asteroid that orbited Luminari Prime. Now they burst from cover at maximum speed, but they did not head toward the craft fleet. Instead, they flew directly toward Luminari Prime itself. "What are they doing?" Crix demanded. "The planet is not under threat yet." "Watch," Tors said. The human ships reached the planet and spread out across its orbital space. They began dropping objects into specific positions, small satellites, no larger than cargo containers. The craft ignored them, focused entirely on catching the retreating Federation fleet. That was their mistake. Tors waited until the craft were deep inside the trap she had created. Then she smiled and gave her next order. "Activate the Neural Disruption Network." The small satellites the human ships had deployed came online simultaneously. They broadcast a signal on a very specific frequency. It was not a weapon that caused physical damage. It was something far worse for a hive mind species. The signal was designed to interfere with the psychic communication that linked all craft minds together. Federation scientists had theorized that such a weapon was possible, but had never figured out how to make it work. Human researchers had cracked the problem 15 years ago. They had kept it secret, waiting for the right moment to use it. That moment was now. Across the craft fleet, ships began to drift. Their coordinated formation fell apart as individual vessels lost contact with the hive mind. For the first time in their existence, the craft found themselves alone inside their own heads. "Their formation is breaking up," Petrov shouted with excitement. "They are not responding to each other." "They cannot," Tors explained. "Right now, every craft pilot is experiencing absolute isolation. Imagine if you suddenly lost all your senses. No sight, no sound, no touch. That is what we did to them. They can still think, but they cannot think together." "This is incredible," Crix said with awe in his voice. "Why did you never share this technology with the Federation?" "Because the Federation would have wanted to negotiate instead of fight. They would have threatened the craft with this weapon and tried to make peace. The craft would have developed countermeasures. Now they never will." Tors opened the fleet channel again. "All ships reverse course. Attack formation Omega. Target the isolated craft vessels. Make them pay for every life they have ever taken." The Federation fleet turned and charged. 122 ships that had been fleeing now became hunters. They hit the confused craft fleet with everything they had. It was not a battle, it was a massacre. The craft ships tried to fight back, but their strength had always been in their unity. Individual craft pilots were competent but not exceptional. Without the hive mind guiding their actions, they made mistakes. They got in each other's way. They failed to coordinate their fire. The Federation ships suffered casualties. 17 vessels were destroyed in the first hour of combat. 43 more were badly damaged, but the craft lost 3 times as many ships. Tors directed the battle with calm precision. She moved her forces like pieces on a game board, surrounding pockets of craft ships and destroying them one group at a time. She used her human ships as strike teams, sending them to deal with any craft vessel that showed signs of recovering its coordination. "The neural disruption field has a limited range," she explained to her officers. Any craft ship that escapes the field will reconnect with the hive mind. We cannot let that happen. For 8 hours, the battle raged around Luminari Prime. The beautiful blue-green world watched as ships exploded and debris rained down into its atmosphere. The Luminari people huddled in their cities and prayed to whatever gods they believed in. When it was over, 321 craft ships had been destroyed. 31 had managed to escape the neural disruption field and flee into hyperspace. The Federation had lost 49 ships with another 78 requiring major repairs. It was the worst defeat the Krath had ever suffered, and it was the greatest victory the Galactic Federation had ever achieved. Admiral Tor stood on her bridge and looked at the wreckage floating in space. She felt no joy at the destruction. War was never something to celebrate, but she felt satisfaction in knowing that her people had done what no one else could. "Send a message to High Counselor Zethnek," she said. "Tell him the battle is won. Luminari Prime is safe." The message traveled through subspace and reached the Federation Council chamber within seconds. When Zethnek read it, he felt something he had not experienced in decades. He felt hope. "They did it," he whispered. "The humans actually did it." Around him, the council members reacted with shock and amazement. Representatives who had doubted the decision to request human command now looked at each other with new understanding. The humans were everything they feared, but they were also everything the Federation needed. The age of human command had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. News of the victory at Luminari Prime spread through the Federation like fire through dry grass. Every species heard the story. A human admiral had defeated the Krath swarm using tactics and weapons that no one had ever seen before. The impossible had become possible. High Counselor Zethnak called an emergency session of the full Federation Council. All 47 member species sent their highest-ranking representatives. The great chamber filled with beings of every shape and size, from the tiny Pixian delegates who floated in gravity bubbles to the massive Gronth ambassador who required a specially reinforced chair. Admiral Tors attended the session through a holographic link from her flagship. She stood in the center of the chamber, her image projected at 10 times her normal size so everyone could see her clearly. "You have saved the Luminari people," Zethnek said formally. "The Federation owes you a debt that can never be repaid." "The debt is shared," Tors replied. "Federation ships fought and died alongside human vessels. This was a victory for all of us." "That is gracious of you to say, but we must acknowledge the truth. Without your command, we would have lost. The Luminari would be extinct. The Krath would be moving toward their next target." Representative Yama of the Dendari Collective stood up. "I voted against requesting human command. I was wrong. I apologize to you, Admiral Tors, and to all of humanity." Others began to speak. Apologies came from species that had once looked down on humans as primitive newcomers. Praise came from those who had always respected human abilities. The chamber filled with voices acknowledging what had happened. Tors listened without expression. She had expected this reaction. Humans had learned long ago that success changed how others saw them. The same qualities that had made them feared now made them admired. But she also knew that this moment was dangerous. Admiration could easily turn back to fear if humans moved too quickly or demanded too much. The Federation was an alliance of equals. Humans needed to remain part of that alliance, not try to dominate it. "I thank you for your words," she said when the chamber grew quiet. "But I must warn you. The Krath we defeated were only one swarm. Our intelligence suggests there are at least 6 more swarms in unexplored space. They will learn from this defeat. They will adapt. The next battle will be harder." Lord Trix of the Melthari Collective raised one of his many limbs. "Are you saying we need to prepare for more attacks?" "I am saying we need to prepare for war. Not a series of battles, but a sustained campaign to eliminate the Krath threat permanently. The Federation has been playing defense for 200 years. That must change. You speak of conquest, Trix said carefully. The Federation does not believe in conquest. I speak of survival. The Krath do not negotiate. They do not make peace. They consume other species because that is their nature. We can continue fighting them one swarm at a time for the next 1,000 years, or we can go on the offensive and end this. The chamber erupted in debate. Some species supported the idea of taking the fight to the Krath. Others were horrified by the suggestion. The philosophical divisions that had always existed within the Federation suddenly became visible. Zethnak called for order. When the chamber quieted, he spoke directly to Tors. What exactly are you proposing, Admiral? I am proposing that the Federation create a permanent military command structure with human officers in key positions. Not because humans are better than other species, but because we have experience that others lack. We have been fighting wars for our entire existence. We know how to think like warriors. You want humans to control the Federation military. I want humans to help the Federation survive. Control is not the goal. Victory is the goal. The debate continued for 3 days. Species argued about history, philosophy, and the nature of violence. Some said that giving humans military power would lead to human domination of the Federation. Others pointed out that without human help, there might not be a Federation left to dominate. In the end, Zethnak called for a vote. The proposal was simple. Human officers would be given command authority over any military operation designated as critical. They would work alongside Federation commanders, but would have final decision-making power in combat situations. 31 species voted in favor, 14 voted against, 2 abstained. The resolution passed. General Sarah Chen received the news at Human Military Coordination Center on Earth. She gathered her senior staff for a briefing. This is what we have been working toward for 50 years, she said. Every battle we fought, every life we lost was building toward this moment. The Federation has finally accepted what we knew from the beginning. They need us. What about the species that voted against? Asked Colonel James Wright, Chen's chief of staff. The Melthari and others. They will not accept human command willingly. They do not have to accept it willingly. They just have to obey orders when they are given. That is how military command works. Chen pulled up a display showing the known locations of Krath swarms. 6 clusters of red dots marked areas where the enemy was believed to be gathering strength. We have a window of opportunity, she explained. The swarm we defeated at Luminari Prime was their most aggressive group. The others are more cautious. They will take time to analyze what happened before they move again. We need to use that time to prepare. Prepare for what exactly? Wright asked. Operation Clean Sweep. A coordinated offensive against all 6 Krath swarms simultaneously. We hit them before they can regroup. We destroy their ability to threaten Federation space. That would require thousands of ships. The Federation does not have that kind of fleet. The Federation has exactly that kind of fleet. They just do not know how to use it. Every member species maintains defensive forces. Combined, those forces outnumber the Krath 10 to 1. The problem has never been numbers. The problem has been coordination. Chen assigned her best officers to begin planning the operation. Admiral Tors would command the main strike force. Admiral Chen himself would oversee logistics and support. Colonels and captains would be assigned to work with each Federation species, helping them integrate their ships into the overall battle plan. The work took months. Human planners had to learn the capabilities and limitations of 47 different military traditions. Some species had powerful ships but poor tactics. Others had excellent individual pilots but no understanding of fleet operations. The Vortons had been building starships for 10,000 years, but had never fought a major space battle. Slowly, the pieces came together. Human officers trained Federation crews in combat tactics. Federation engineers helped humans understand alien technology. Mistakes were made and corrected. Rivalries developed and were resolved. A combined force began to take shape. Admiral Tors observed the transformation from her flagship. She saw species that had never worked together learning to coordinate their actions. She saw old prejudices giving way to professional respect. She saw something new being born. "This is what humans do," she told Commander Lee one evening. "We build coalitions. We find ways to make different groups work together. It is the one skill we developed that matters more than all our weapons." "You sound almost optimistic, Admiral." "I am realistic. This war will cost lives. Many of the ships we are preparing will never return home. But if we succeed, the Krath threat will be ended. The Federation will be stronger than it has ever been. That is worth fighting for." Lee nodded slowly. He had served with Tors for 10 years. He had seen her lead fleets into battles that seemed hopeless and come out victorious. He trusted her judgment more than he trusted his own. "When do we launch?" he asked. "When we are ready, not before." Tors looked out at the fleet gathering around her flagship. Human ships and Federation vessels of every design mixed together in formation. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. And she was going to lead it into the darkness to face an enemy that had never been defeated. The next battle would determine the future of the galaxy. Tors intended to make sure humanity was on the winning side. Operation Clean Sweep launched 6 months after the victory at Luminary Prime. 6 task forces departed from staging areas across Federation space. Each force was commanded by a human officer, with Federation ship captains serving under them. The largest task force was led by Admiral Tors herself. She commanded 160 ships, including 20 human vessels that formed the core of her strike capability. Their target was the Krath primary nest, a region of space where intelligence indicated the largest concentration of enemy forces had gathered. No one knew exactly how many Krath were there. Estimates ranged from 500 to over 1,000 ships. "We are flying into the unknown," Tors told her captains during the final briefing. "We do not know the enemy's exact strength. We do not know their defensive positions. We do not know if our neural disruption technology will work against a force this large. What we do know is that we cannot let the Krath survive to threaten the Federation again." The fleet entered hyperspace and began the long journey toward enemy territory. It would take 3 weeks to reach the primary nest. 3 weeks of tension and preparation as every crew member wondered if they would survive what was coming. Tors used the time to review every piece of intelligence they had about the Krath. She studied their biology, their psychology, their history. She tried to understand them the way she would understand any enemy. The Krath had evolved on a harsh world where resources were scarce. They developed their hive mind as a survival mechanism, allowing them to coordinate hunting and gathering with perfect efficiency. When they developed technology and reached space, they brought that same survival instinct with them. They consumed other species because their psychology could not accept any other approach. Sharing was not in their nature. "Can they change?" Commander Lee asked during one of their discussions. "Every species can change," Tors replied. "But change requires pressure. The Krath have never experienced enough pressure to force them to adapt. Every species they have encountered has either been destroyed or fled. We are the first to hurt them badly enough that they might reconsider their approach." "You think they might negotiate?" "I think they might learn to fear us. That is not the same thing as negotiation, but it might be enough." The fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the primary nest region. Tors immediately ordered all ships to full alert status. Sensors scanned the space ahead, looking for signs of the enemy. What they found exceeded their worst estimates. 842 ships confirmed, reported the sensor officer, his voice shaking. Possibly more hiding in the asteroid fields. Tors felt cold certainty settle in her chest. They were outnumbered more than 5-1. The neural disruption technology might not work against a force this large. This could be the end of everything. But she had prepared for this possibility. "Signal all task forces," she ordered. "Commence coordinated attack on my mark." Across the galaxy, the 5 other task forces received her signal. They had been positioned near their own targets, waiting for this moment. Operation Clean Sweep was designed to hit all 6 Krath swarms at the same time. Even if one task force failed, the others might succeed. Mark Tors said. 600 ships attacked 6 different Krath concentrations simultaneously. The enemy's hive mind could process information quickly, but even they needed time to coordinate a response across such vast distances. By the time they understood what was happening, the battle had begun everywhere at once. At the primary nest, Tors led her fleet into the heart of the Krath formation. She activated the neural disruption network as soon as they were close enough, but the sheer number of enemy ships meant that many remained connected to the hive mind. It did not matter. The humans had prepared for this too. "Human ships form assault wedge," Tors commanded. "We punch through their center while the Federation ships engage their flanks." The 30 human vessels moved into a tight formation and accelerated toward the densest part of the Krath fleet. Their weapons blazed continuously as they cut a path through the enemy. Krath ships exploded around them, but more kept coming. Federation ships engaged the enemy with everything they had. Thalian battleships exchanged fire with Krath cruisers. Vorton science vessels provided electronic warfare support. Dendari carriers launched swarms of fighters that harassed the enemy flanks. It was chaos and destruction on a scale that no one had ever witnessed. Tors watched the tactical display as casualties mounted on both sides. Her fleet was taking heavy losses. The Krath were absorbing damage that should have destroyed any normal force, but slowly, gradually, the tide began to turn. "Their coordination is breaking down," Commander Lee reported. "The neural disruption network is having an effect. They are starting to retreat." "Do not let them escape," Tors ordered. "All ships pursue and destroy." The battle continued for 18 hours. By the end, the primary nest had been shattered. Over 600 Krath ships had been destroyed. The survivors fled into deep space with Federation forces in pursuit. Tors surveyed the aftermath from her damaged flagship. The Determination had taken 17 direct hits. 3 decks were open to space. 42 crew members were dead. But they had won. Reports came in from the other task forces. 5 out of 6 had achieved their objectives. The 6th had been forced to retreat after heavy losses, but they had still destroyed a significant portion of the Krath swarm they faced. Total Krath losses exceeding 2,000 ships, reported Fleet Intelligence. Their ability to threaten Federation space has been effectively eliminated. Tors allowed herself to feel a moment of satisfaction. Then she began planning the next phase of operations. The Krath survivors would try to regroup. They could not be allowed to recover. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Today, they had achieved something that no one thought possible. They had broken the back of an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. And they had done it because one small species from one small planet had refused to accept that defeat was inevitable. Humanity had proven once again that survival was not about being the strongest or the fastest or the smartest. It was about being willing to do whatever was necessary to protect what mattered. The war was not over, but the end was finally in sight. The war against the Krath lasted another 3 years. Human commanders led Federation forces in campaign after campaign, hunting down the scattered swarms and destroying them one by one. The casualties were heavy. Hundreds of ships were lost. Thousands of lives ended in the cold darkness of space. But the Federation prevailed. When the last Krath swarm was cornered in a distant nebula, Admiral Tors offered them something no one expected: a choice. "Surrender," she transmitted across all frequencies. "Accept confinement on a world we designate. We will not destroy you if you choose to live in peace." The Krath had never received such an offer. Their experience told them that war only ended when one side was completely destroyed. The concept of mercy was alien to their psychology. For 3 days, the surviving Krath debated among themselves. Their hive mind processed the information and reached a conclusion that surprised everyone. They accepted. 2,000 Krath vessels powered down their weapons and allowed themselves to be escorted to a remote planet at the edge of Federation space. It was not a beautiful world. It was harsh and cold, much like their original homeworld, but it was a place where they could survive. Admiral Tors watched the last Krath ship land on the surface. She felt no triumph, only exhaustion and the hope that this solution would hold. "Do you think they will stay?" Commander Lee asked. "I think they will try. They have learned something they never knew before. They have learned that there are limits to what violence can achieve. Whether they internalize that lesson or not remains to be seen." Tors returned to Earth a hero. Every species in the Federation celebrated her name. Statues were built in her honor on 100 worlds. She received medals and awards from governments she had never heard of. But she found no joy in the celebration. She had seen too much death. She had made too many decisions that cost lives. She was tired in a way that no amount of rest could fix. General Chen met her at the spaceport in Geneva. The old woman looked even older now, but her eyes still held the sharp intelligence that had guided humanity through 50 years of integration into galactic society. "You did it," Chen said simply. "You ended a war that lasted longer than human civilization." "The Federation ended it. Humanity just showed them how." "Same thing. The Federation would have lost without us. You know that as well as I do." Tors nodded slowly. It was true. Without human tactical knowledge, without human weapons, without human willingness to sacrifice, the Krath would have consumed the Federation eventually. Humanity had saved the galaxy. But that salvation had come at a cost. "What happens now?" Tors asked. "Now we build. The Federation has agreed to establish a permanent joint military command with human officers in senior positions. We will train their people. We will share our knowledge. Eventually, they will not need us anymore." "You think that is a good thing?" Chen smiled. "I think it is inevitable. Humanity is good at fighting wars, but we are also good at teaching others how to defend themselves. In 100 years, the Federation will be able to protect itself without our help. That is our real contribution. Not winning battles, but making sure there are others who can win battles after we are gone." The years that followed proved Chen right. Human military academies trained officers from every Federation species. Human tactical doctrines became standard throughout the Alliance. Human weapons designs were shared and improved upon. The Federation grew stronger, not because humans controlled it, but because humans had taught it how to be strong. Admiral Tors retired after 40 years of service. She spent her final years on a quiet planet in the Outer Rim, writing her memoirs and watching the stars. Commander Lee, now Admiral Lee, visited her when he could. "The Krath are asking to join the Federation," Lee told her during one of these visits. Tors laughed. "Of course they are. They learned the same lesson we did." "What lesson is that?" "That the only way to survive in this universe is to find allies, to build something bigger than yourself. The Krath spent millennia trying to consume everything around them. Now they understand that cooperation is more powerful than consumption." "You think we should accept them?" "I think we should give them the chance to prove themselves. That is what the Federation gave us 50 years ago. We were violent and dangerous and primitive. They took a chance on us anyway. The Krath deserved the same opportunity. The Federation Council debated the Krath application for 2 years. In the end, they voted to accept. The vote was 45 in favor, 0 against, with 2 abstentions. Humanity voted in favor. High Counselor Zethnak, now very old, cast his vote in favor as well. He remembered what Admiral Tors had taught him, that enemies could become allies if given the chance. The Krath integration into the Federation was difficult. Old hatreds took time to fade. Species that had lost loved ones to Krath attacks struggled to accept their former enemies as equals. But slowly, gradually, the healing began. 100 years after the Battle of Luminari Prime, the Galactic Federation had grown to include 73 member species. The Krath were full members with representation on the Council. Human officers still served in senior military positions, but they were now a minority among the Federation's commanders. Humanity had done what it always did. It had fought, survived, and then helped build something better than what existed before. The galaxy was safer because of human sacrifice. The galaxy was stronger because of human teaching. And somewhere, in the great archives of Federation history, the story of how a small, violent, short-lived species from an unremarkable planet had saved civilization was preserved for all future generations to learn. The story ended with a simple truth that Admiral Elena Tors had understood from the beginning. Humanity's greatest weapon was not its guns or its ships or its tactics. It was its refusal to accept defeat. Its insistence on finding a way to win even when winning seemed impossible. That was what made humans dangerous. That was what made humans valuable. That was what made the Galactic Federation request human command for critical missions. Because when the universe threw its worst at them, humans did not run. They did not surrender. They fought back with everything they had. And they won.